So all of your training and onboarding is designed initially not to get them to be the consummate salesperson in your industry. It's to get them to the aha moment. Because once they get that, then they have the belief enough to go to the next thing, which is I'm going to invest more of my time and interest to learn this role more.
This is the PMP Industry Insider Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome out to another episode of the PMP Industry Insider Podcast, where we take a look at what is changing in the pest control industry, and we take it to the front lines of those that are driving those changes. As always, I'm Donnie, Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services, which has Triangle Pest as well as Triangle Lawn. And with me, wearing a lei and maybe even a dress, I'm not sure, Mr. Dan Gordon from Hawaii. He's waking up early so we can record this podcast. Dan, would you like to say good morning, introduce our fantastic topic and our guests as well as our sponsors?
Absolutely. So good morning, Dan Gordon, PCL Bookkeepers and M&A specialists. We do CFO work for the pest control industry as well as exit planning. And so let me read off the standard stuff that I read off. So you may have heard the news that we've expanded our PMP Industry Insider offering to peer groups in partnership with industry veteran David Billingsley. To learn more, go back and listen to episode 136 or visit pmpinsider.com/peer groups. And quite honestly, since we've started, we've put in, a couple dozen people into new peer groups already. So it's really actually pretty terrific. Also, consider supporting our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Coalmarch by WorkWave for your marketing needs. Dave Gianetto told us that it's not just digital, it's all of your marketing needs. So if you're interested, learn more at coalmarch.com. And for those interested in industry-specific insurance, i.e. your workers' comp, your auto, your general liability, PestSure, visit them at pestsure.com. And today we're talking about an industry near and dear to Donnie's heart. We've got our guest is Stephen Rhyne. He's the CEO of ConveYour, and we're going to talk about how to break in to door-to-door. Now, Stephen, this is an interesting one. He worked for Vector and Cutco selling knives. I won't go where I went before. Well, I will. He cut his teeth at Cutco selling knives. That's where he started.
By the way,
he was very successful.
If you can stay, try the veal. We'll be here all week. So just Dan, go right ahead.
Yeah. All right, let's go. So anyway, the cool thing is he built out software to manage the reps, and they're still using it. He's got 20 years of experience in direct sales, recruiting, onboarding, training. Last year, over 600,000 potential reps set up interviews through his software. He basically provides back office and administrative items needed to grow a door-to-door team. And if I forgot anything, Stephen, let me know. And anyway, welcome.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Stephen. And just before we get going here, let me just set our audience at ease. I apologize for giving you a visual of Dan in scantinating clothes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know he's actually fully clothed, at least from the chest up. I can't vouch for anything further down from there. And the other thing that Dan was actually being super nice. The reason, he was being super nice because the truth is, if you listen to this podcast, I've gotten my butt kicked at door to door a couple of times now. So we're super excited about having Stephen on and kind of talk us through. And so, Stephen, welcome to the podcast. We got a lot of stuff to cover, so I just want to jump right in. This is probably one of the most difficult and yet the most successful and necessary changes that I see on the horizon for pest control companies. There have been, in our industry in general, there's always been kind of this traditional trajectory of companies. They stay generational, they grow larger and larger, and then over time, through traditional marketing, they grow into large, mature companies. Door-to-door has come on the scene and completely upended that model. We've seen companies come in, and in 5 years, they're doing the same, if not more, than these larger companies who've been in business for over 50 years. And Dan was involved in a fairly large transaction recently with one of the major door-to-door companies that was they had been in business the same amount of time. I think they started the same year I did, which was 2006. Actually, maybe they started a bit later. I think it was right around.
They started later, I think later. Yeah.
Yeah. And
in less than 10 years, they built a company that was doing over $100 million.
Correct. So it has completely transformed our industry, and it's gotten a lot of people's attention. It's a huge, it's a huge thing that we talk about at conferences. And so we're excited to have you on the podcast. We want to talk about this a little bit. And this very first question that we want to talk about is a big one. And it's one that we struggled with here at Triangle. Because, there's this question of like door-to-door reps. Are they 1099? Are they 1099 folks? Are they direct employees? And so can you just talk a little bit about, what is different about recruiting a 1099 employee? And we won't get into like specific states.
Yeah, don't talk about the tax, right?
No, we're not going to get into that.
But meaning the outside contractor versus having a bunch of employees.
Correct. So maybe talk us through that first. How do you recruit that person, and what's different about it?
What's different about it is the way they're going to behave, and the way it is going to change the way you have to approach recruiting and sales. That's the biggest part about it. So what's different about the person is that you're looking for, and we'll go into kind of like the psychographics of the person, but you're looking for somebody that is outcome driven, that is very confident, that already knows that they have options in life. And it's actually, you have to think about the process of recruiting these people. When I say 1099, I'm referring to a 1099 commission-based person that feels comfortable in that. I'm not talking about the person that could be. I'm talking about the person that's going to be successful in there. Right. And so the entire way you think about, the way great D2D companies think about recruiting 1099 reps is that they think about it as a sales and marketing op. Okay. It is a sales and marketing operation rather than a filling of needed salespeople as a result of demand you already have. So the demand it's building the system and building the legs and then getting the results as for the team that you create versus more of a, hey, we've gotten more inbound, we've got more leads coming in, and so let's split these up for more reps to close the business based on our marketing efforts. And so I'm not saying this is you, but I've seen traditional businesses kind of still have that experience of, hey, we're great. I've worked really hard on this business, especially as an owner. I've had the business for a long time. They would be lucky to work for my company. Okay. And I'm going to put out an ad and I'm going to get the right person, and they're going to have experience in sales already. And you really have to take this as an approach of, I am systematically convincing and attracting the right people and building a wonderful marketing and sales funnel to nurture that potential recruit into my opportunity. And there's that process of selling, because I think people don't see it as a sale because there's no exchange in money, except you're giving them money. But actually, they are purchasing something, and that is they're purchasing your opportunity with their time, and that's even bigger in some cases than a customer purchasing your service. So the other way you have to think about it is why it's different is that there is intrinsic to 1099 and commission based is that you can't know which ones are going to work out, which ones aren't, and you can't give them a lot of time to figure it out as a W-2 would, and so there's going to be higher churn. And because of the higher churn, where people kind of get their butts handed to them is all of the back pressure that is created on the business. And what I mean by back pressure is all of the systems, like the onboarding and the training and the retention systems that you need to even convert that attention into something that will stay, where you don't lose your shorts on it.
So that's where we got pummeled. Expense. Yes. So I'm just going to start with this one statement. Amen, brother. So no, we got pummeled this year with that. So number one is I think you're correct, right? I mean, we didn't talk too much about the psychographic of a 1099 person, but you have to realize this is a completely different human being. They view the world differently. They're not looking for security. They're looking for opportunity. And it's all about, pegging your business as the golden opportunity, right? Because all of these folks, I shouldn't say all of them, a lot of them that I met, they are going to be millionaires before they're 25 or 26, and they're going to drive fast cars and a bunch of other,
yes.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, but that's true, right? And then so you got that demographic that you're trying to attract, right? That you're marketing to. But Stephen, I mean, you're 100% correct. This is where we really got hit hard this year was the support of pulling them in, getting them trained, getting them through the process, getting them out on the doors. Like we took a hit on that. I mean, when I say we took a hit, like we did not do it efficiently, and it created a lot of, like, I think you called it back pressure. We called it something else, which is probably not appropriate for the podcast, but nonetheless, I mean, it was hard. I mean, so what do you do? I mean, like, okay, so now we're going to get into how we attract these weird 1099 people who are completely comfortable in risking it all. But let's talk a bit about this back pressure, because I think that's a hard thing for people to solve. We did not solve it this year. In fact, I mean, we got through it and we kind of muscled through it, and I don't know that we did it that great. So maybe talk about that a little bit.
I can talk about that. I would love to hear different examples of like what were the things that really, held you up. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to go into some of the
so I mean, I can tell you,
go ahead.
The biggest, not the biggest, some of the bigger issues that we're having was the amount of training and onboarding we were having to do before we could actually get them on the door. And we even tried to say, okay, we're going to bring them in for a day, and we're going to go through all of that, just kind of the basics of this as being at the company. And then we try to get them on the door for a couple of days, and we had to bring them back and try to backfill. And of course, like most door-to-door teams, they were in every day and they were doing some sort of training for an hour or two before they hit the doors. But the big hang up was the onboarding itself. I mean, the paperwork, I mean, that stuff's easy, right? We can send that to them and they can sign it all digitally. And that piece of it was easy. It was the bringing them in and teaching them closing techniques, teaching them door approaches, teaching them, here's going to be your obstacles, and here's how you're going to review, like just getting in front of objections, getting in front of that was the thing that took a lot of time. And the other part that was really difficult was the sequencing of these candidates. We were trying to source the candidates locally, so we didn't have like, hey, here comes 40 reps. We're going to do a training program for a week, and then all 40 reps are going to hit the door. No, it was like, oh, we got a rep here, and then we got 2 more coming in the next week. And so there's this whole sequencing issue that was happening too. And that combined, man, it sucked. I mean, just straight up.
It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts.
It was that. And the other thing is that it tied up someone who was actually pretty good on the door, because he's teaching them these objections, right? He's actually doing the role playing with them. So now he's not on the door either. Right. And so that was for us was the big pain point. So if you're listening and you're thinking I'm not that smart, you're correct. Okay. You're right. Let's just get that away. So keep it going.
Well, Stephen, before you go into it, you had mentioned before, though, that the churn is great. And you talk about having a bench or, a second. How many layers deep do you make this bench, or you just keep recruiting like crazy and, see what happens?
You just keep recruiting and continuing. Now there's obviously seasonality where people will hold off on recruiting to try to get more sequential launching of like a cohort of reps, right? But it is continual, and it's converting things that are in a cycle to then having like kind of like these cohorts, right, that are going out. But they are doing it constantly. So believe it or not, the recruiting, the document signing, and the collection of information, you never stop selling. So this is actually a part of how you get great training and how you get reps on the door better. So and we'll talk about the recruiting process, but in the recruiting process and the data collection, you're blurring the lines between recruiting, onboarding, and training. So if you've ever been through a really good sales experience with a company and you don't feel like there's these separate little, I'm getting too hypothetical here, but I'm trying to compare it to something that you've experienced in your life before, which is like when you were really jazzed to buy from a company where it felt really good, like an Apple experience. So what happens is people treat once they've recruited a rep, they start treating the onboarding and the training experience like an HR exercise, but it's actually still sales. So the missing piece sometimes is that you're actually hyping and building belief in the role in the onboarding process. So for example, you're collecting their shirt size or their badge photo, and right in the middle where you're collecting their shirt size for swag or something, you're sharing a video on how you guys do, competitions and what they're going to win if they sell. Okay. So you're not that, it's all about shrinking the time to get to the door with somebody that's like really drank the Kool-Aid. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a bad connotation. I just thought about like 100 people dying, in a location, but anyway,
it's
the
one
point
that
is
often, so it's okay.
Yeah. So it's about actually, because if you build a belief, they're going to take the extra effort to make sure that they are getting the train because they're bought in. So you're still doing sales. And the problem is they think of it as just like, okay, this person's already bought in. In a W-2 role, they get into the role and they're somewhat bought in, right? They're like a W-2 employee. And you kind of have the assumption you have their attention. With 1099, they're looking how to nope out of this role as soon as they see something they don't like. And sometimes people quietly nope out, which is they don't actually do the work before they hit the door because they're not bought in. You don't have a hook in. So if you actually keep the promotion and the sales going through that process, they're excited, and then they do the work to get them unstuck. So tactically though, I know you said that the paperwork's easy, but it's often not for some companies. Once you get over to like 15, 20, 25 reps a month that you're trying to onboard, it gets untenable, I think. And so automating all of that, like collecting all of their badge photo, their picture, their shirt size, having an inline pop-up where they sign the rep agreement, getting their W-9 or whatever, getting their, voided check, all of that stuff streamlined to get that out of the way. That means you buy back 1 or 2 days where you can spend more time doing training. And then the training, what we've seen is people taking almost all of the in-person script, all the training, and putting that digital. And so that really helps you take what used to be a continual experience where people coming in, every once in a while, get them doing, this is where you turn it into a boot camp. So every week or every other week, you have an orientation or a boot camp on the same time. And you might have a rep come in, let's say it's Wednesday, you have a rep come in Monday and you say, you need to do all of your digital training before this Wednesday. But you might also have somebody come in Thursday and say, you have to go faster to get ready for Wednesday. And so this is where you get everybody to line up so that when they land Wednesday, they're all bought in, they've all been sold, and they've all been trained. So that when you get to that boot camp, you're only having quality conversations about stuff that actually matters. You're answering questions and you're building relationships versus kind of doing that rote response of like answer or like training on things. So they should be ready to go, have watched their, how to pitch, have been practicing their pitch. And then when they show up, you're just watching them to see if they have all the things that they need, and coaching them, through those issues that are blocking them before they're ready. So that's how you convert it to a cohort.
So, okay. So let's so you do all of that. Again, for us, our biggest issue was not our biggest issue. The other thing is just the churn with that amount of training. And I mean, there's other things that we could have done obviously way better. We of course have learned that since then. What specifically, like if someone is sitting outside of this world right now and they're interested in getting into door to door, there's obviously the mechanics and the process of the systems of like onboarding reps but what can they do to get folks even interested? Like how do they even get started in getting reps even interested in their company? Like any insight into how they do that? I mean, I see a lot of folks who want to get into door to door. They just simply don't know where to start. And so can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. So you're talking about really like the sourcing and the attraction and starting from there. So the first thing to understand about these people, as far as there's two main ways people get recruits for D2D, and the growing one is personal recruits. And I'll touch on that second. So the first one obviously is the typical sourcing model of using job boards like Indeed. When you're writing out your, have you read like Who Not How? It's a great book on like how to hire. Fantastic book. And they talk a lot about the like how to write a role for somebody that's like in a business suite that's very outcome driven, like what outcomes you want, because it will really scare away the people that don't believe that they can get those outcomes. Right. And so the post on Indeed or the post that you put out is typically much more confident and much more focused on the outcomes. Like we were looking for reps or we're looking for someone who is gonna be out and talking to homeowners and is going to get these results and therefore is going to be heavily rewarded for those results. Like you're really confident about how you post. And like, this is not for everyone. You kind of put a little chip on their shoulder. And that will automatically kind of weed out the people that want to hide. They can't hide. Right. And so that'll save you a lot of fluff. The other one is to go, if you don't have any D2D reps yourself, go to your sales reps that are recent, like within the last 3 to 6 months, they started with you and they're doing really well, and ask them in your language, where were you at? Where were you in the world? And what were you thinking when you picked us, when you said, I'm going to work with you? And you actually get different you don't have to get just the person who's like, oh, I'm gonna make all the money and have a Lambo. Like there's the people that also are like, I wanted great part-time work. I was confident in my options, but I have this other thing I'm doing and I wanted great part-time work. Or I'm young and I wanted to build my resume and just get some experience. Or I really liked your mission. You just get different answers. And just like in a marketing and sales operation, we make different landing pages for different people that have different motivations. And so it's the same thing, like we're just working with people. And so you can put out different ads for different, I call them tributaries. Like one person's really focused on part-time, one person's really focused on, great pay. And then you push them to a single system to nurture them through that process. So if you don't have any reps now, or you don't have any D2D reps, maybe you can meet some. Okay, they're not hard to find, and ask them, hey, why did you take this role? What were your other options, and why did you go with this versus this other option? And use that language, because the way they talk about it and is going to matter. Just like great copy comes from your best customers.
But my thing is like a lot of these reps are not on Indeed, right? I mean, like. You've got to, are folks going out to campuses? I mean, like, how are they getting these reps? I mean, how
campuses,
how are they getting that opportunity? You know what I mean? Getting that opportunity to talk with them just to begin with.
Yeah. So this is where the biggest area of growth for D2D companies is they start with the core. They do some recruiting personally, and just manual recruiting of their first reps. They're going to do well, and then they heavily incentivize team building. They're typically called like PRs or personal recruits. And you have to make it stupid easy for your existing reps who are busy and doing great at the role of sales to sneeze the role to somebody else. And you have to incentivize them, because they're heavily focused on incentivization, to recruit more people. So the way that, without using like a specific platform like our product, you give the recruiter or every rep an easy form that's bookmarked on their phone, where they're like, let me just plug this person's information in. You meet them at a bar, or you meet them at a party or something. They're looking for a great role. Plug it in. That person gets credit, right? Or at least, tracking it of who referred whom from the get-go. Mm-hmm. That person immediately gets a text message that starts them down a nurture sequence. Okay. So think of it as like a sales leave behind. You just made a sale, or this person's a prospect and might want your services later. You're going to collect the lead and make it really easy. It'd be stupid not for a rep to do that, right? When you're working with a customer, imagine not having that for building your team. And so then you build actual incentives for the team on the number of recruits that they're bringing in. Okay, it's a typical downline model, and the best ones in the space are managing that really well. In fact, the best ones in the
down
space
does
are
that
doing
go?
it.
Is that like a multi-level
Yeah,
marketing thing, or is it just because
they
one of the
do.
things
I
that I
wouldn't say
see
it's
is
like
these
purely
guys move in
MLM.
cabals. They go from company to company with
Yep,
15 reps. Okay, I'm taking my team and I'm going to this
that's
company.
right.
How does that work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you'll have a typical. It's not straight up MLM, but you definitely typically have like a regional that splits and has a couple divisionals, and then the division has many area directors. And the ones that are killing it, or that do this really, really well, they can see the groundswell of how many potential recruits that they are going to have before the season starts, well before the season starts, because they can see into how many people they're recruiting, how many potential recruits, like they have a pipeline. Okay. It's wild. So, tracking that and making it really easy. And then what happens on the end, I'm a potential recruit. I get a text message, and I'll give you a typical flow. You click on a link, you go into we call it a portal on our side. Let's say a landing page, you watch a video. That video is from an owner, or one of the top VPs of sales or something. And it's very confident, very a matter of fact, pretty exciting to watch. And it's very like, hey, I'm busy. Sometimes it's like just a selfie and the guy's like walking, like, hey, I'm busy right now, but I'm going to tell you about what we're doing because we're hot, we're doing well. Okay, but it works. Like it's psychological.
Right.
But it's not like, hi, this is my company. It's not that. It's very like, hey, you want to come, you want to place a container that's big enough for your goals and your desires. This is that container. It's going to be a lot of hard work. You need grit. And they're not pulling their punches, and they're not bearing the lead. So, because right off the bat, if you do that, then you can increase the top line funnel, knowing you're not going to get a bunch of bad stuff into your funnel. Right. And then you ask really direct questions after they watch that video, questions like, what's most important to you? Was it pay? You go back to this kind of motivational questions, and you can use those questions later to actually follow up with them. Like, hey, I know you were interested in a role. It's just great marketing segmentation. Like when you click on a certain SKU on your website, right? And then you get an email later saying, hey, do you want to buy that SKU? So again, more marketing stuff. But then the thing is, you actually start doing qualification questions right now. Do you understand this is 100% commission only? Do you understand that this is like, you just make them answer those? And if they answer them all right, then you push them directly to schedule an interview on a built-in, Calendly or cal.com calendar to book with a calendar to do a screening. And you just completely processize all of that minutia of keeping somebody, not keeping them, screening them. It used to be so easy for your people to just move them to kept. That's it. Nothing else. No emails they have to write. Nothing. Just, I want to keep this person. And that's it. And then everything else is streamlined. And then immediately start the onboarding process. Hopefully I'm not getting too opinion here. Immediately get them the documents they need, and then go right into the training process. So it's just all systemized.
Yeah. So let's we could talk about this one section, I feel like, all day, but we don't have that much time. So let's talk about, like, okay, so now you got someone who's bit, and they're like, okay, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. You brought the metaphor up, so we're just going to go.
I did it.
Yeah. So now I'm slurping it down, and it's smelling like coconut. And anyway, so I'm doing all that, and now I'm ready to go. So now the question becomes, okay, how do we get them through the pipeline? How do we get them onboarded? How do we get them to a place where they're actually ready to get on the door?
So you're talking, when you say onboarding, I think of that just as like the admin stuff, and then training separately. But we'll just call it like onboarding and training. Getting them onboarded as far as like understanding the role. Right. So like I said before, it is belief building, and I won't go more into that. But you do want to do the belief building and intermix training. I think it's very important we actually started out as a training platform first before we did any of the recruiting and onboarding stuff. But with training, you have to help the rep understand that you are here, and you have to set expectations. What I mean by you are here, like, when you go into a mall and you see the little dot, like, you are here and you're going to be here. You want to set really strong expectations. I hear this all the time from D2D companies, is that you have to set expectations of what you need to know to get them to understand, like, they have to they're very outcome oriented people. So if you just start on training and you don't tell them what winning looks like on training, that's where you lose. So a typical example is like, hey, by Wednesday, when we have orientation, you need to know this, this, and this. This is what we expect from you. I'm going to go through real quick. I'm going to give you just a quick understanding of the industry, and then we're going to dive in, and I'm going to teach you this, 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 and this. And these are the behaviors. These are the skills that you're going to have once you're finished. Because if you don't have them, you're not going to be able to do this. And it's just really
putting out the incentive for them. You're going to make this much money if you do. So is that because the most successful door-to-door companies I've seen, everything is gamified, right? So it's some of them do like a March Madness type thing with brackets and everything else, and it's actually pretty cool to watch the whole thing in a successful door-to-door company.
Yeah. So every door-to-door company, when the training, it comes down to these categories. It's like expectations, especially like laying it out as a timeline. You don't need to know everything, but you need to know this once you knock your first door. Second is all the tools, training them on the tools that you use. So like what your point of sale system is, what their canvassing tool is. And it's really heavily focused on not giving the rep all the information and creating a linear experience for the rep, where they're just going through it like this. They're not having to think about the whole context of the role over the next 6 months. And you're only giving them the training they need to get to the next successful point. Okay. So you're not trying to get them all the training. You're basically launching them to be successful that first day, to get them to the aha moment, which is, oh my gosh, I knocked a door and they didn't, tell me to go away. Like I had a sale, or I have a couple leads that are going to close here soon. Because that's your churn point. That's your first churn point. So all of your training and onboarding is designed initially not to get them to be the consummate salesperson in your industry. It's to get them to the aha moment. Because once they get that, then they have the belief enough to go to the next thing, which is, I'm going to invest more of my time and interest to learn this role more. And that, I think, I don't know about you, but it cuts down a lot of the worry with, like, does this rep have everything they need? If they get that, then they're willing. So it's a contract of interest and attention. And that's how I've seen most of them, catch it. Like, if you can get, like in software, it's like, if I can get a person in 5 minutes to do this one thing in the software, I've got them for the next month. And if I can get them to do this in the first 30 days, I got them for the next, 90 days. That's how you think of it. It's just like conversions. Is that too wishy-washy, or do you
No, it's good. It's good. And I think it's spot on. I mean, sometimes I feel like we get wrapped around the axle, and you forget at the end of the day, it is psychology. It is 100% psychology. And it's how do you leverage that psychology to make sure that the person stays engaged and excited? Because I think about, sometimes people, they go training, they think it's all about the shoes or the shorts or whatever, but it's not, right? It's all about the psychology and the commitment. And it's so funny to hear you talk about this, because it's 100% the game, 100% the game, right? And just how do you make it super, super easy in a way that you scale? And so, all right, well, we're going to have to start wrapping up here, but before we do that, I want to just give you a moment. I don't know that we fully gave you a good platform at the beginning to talk a little bit about your company and what it is that you do. Do you just want to just take maybe just 30 seconds and just tell everyone what it is that you do, a little bit about your company, and then we'll finish out from there. So,
sure, yeah. So the company, or my product, is ConveYour.com. So it's ConveYour, ConveYour.com. And we help companies that want to build large independent sales forces recruit, onboard, train, and retain more reps so they can dominate in their industry, as you mentioned, right? And we believe heavily in the D2D sales model, or the direct sales model, because of what we've been seeing in the cost of acquisition online, and Google making all its changes, and just marketing get more expensive, and it's hard to get eyeballs. And so D2D is in a major way to grow a business. I think it's a very human way to grow a business. I like the face-to-face aspect of it. And we are a full system to help you bring in recruits, build a recruiting experience, build that onboarding so you can systemize all of it, do the training on our platform, and then also use SMS messaging to support those reps out in the field. So as you grow your team, we help you systemize support so you're not pulling your hair out and your managers aren't going, I don't want more reps because I can't handle the ones I already have.
Right.
And so we help you do all that so you can go do more recruiting.
Right.
And do you have some sort of, do you have some sort in your system? Is there some sort of standard operating procedures that are flexible, or how does it all come together?
So we started out working in enterprise. So we work with some of the bigger names in the industry, helping them recruit tons of people and train them, and they kind of came with their own systems. And what we saw was more and more people that were smaller outfits were wanting to do some of the stuff the bigger teams were doing. And so we operationalize that. So we've got best practices. We have workflows, like full on visual workflows where we can insert all them into your account. And you can run those blueprints. And we're actually doing more and more of that systemization where we're taking best practices and we're just making them plug and play. You start with our product, you say go, and you can tweak it however you want, but start with the things we already know that are working.
No, that's great. That's
interesting.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, it has been fantastic having you here on the podcast. And this is a very fascinating topic, especially for me, just because I've gotten the ring and come out with a black eye 3 times now. But so I'm going to keep going, but it's been great to have you on the podcast. And again, we'll do, just for a reminder for all of our listeners, all resources and topics that we talked about today, we'll put a link up to Stephen's website on our podcast website. Just go to pmpindustryinsider.com. Take a look under show notes for this episode. And as always, we always appreciate any kind of ratings and reviews that you can give us, unless they're negative. If they're negative or bad in any kind of nature, we ask that you direct those to Dan. And with that, we're all going to sign out at this time. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks so much, Stephen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye now.